So welcome back to DecoyNoise and another episode of Am I the Antagonist? And am I the antagonist for telling my husband that I hate his mentally disabled brother and that I will never form a relationship with him? So if you haven't already, please consider subscribing down below and turning the notifications on. As the DecoyNoise channel has grown bigger, the comments section down below has become way greater than what's going on over at Reddit. So if you want to be a part of that discussion, make sure you subscribe so you can be the first people that are reacting to the video, talking about it down below. But let's just get to this thread right now. So OP writes, there's a lot going on here, but I'll try to keep it as short as possible. My husband and I live fairly close to his parents, like 15 minutes away, and his brother who has severe intellectual disabilities at age 36. My husband is a doctor, and with the situation, we decided to live apart for the time being so he doesn't have to worry about accidentally infecting me. So now I've moved in with my in-laws and his brother. Okay. I love his in-laws, like my own parents. His brother, however, is another story. He's disabled, but he has an incredibly foul mouth and has very offensive opinions that he's formed from years surfing deep corners of the internet. But he's disabled and is all not there sometimes, so I do my best to help out and keep my mouth shut. Last Saturday, I was going on a walk with him, daily exercise, when we were walking past a big grocery store parking lot. We see a dad and son loading groceries into their car, and my brother-in-law started yelling racial insults at them. They were Asian. I was horrified and I tried pulling him away, but it was heartbreaking seeing the look on the little boy's face and the exhausted, defeated expression on his dad's face as they drove away. I was so angry that night I called my husband and I basically told him I will rent a hotel room myself because I can't stand another minute in the same house as his brother. It has been a week and my husband has told me he can't sleep because he's so upset over what I told him. I admit I used harsh words and had fully laid out my feelings. He said he still loves his brother and can't stand the thought of us never getting along. Am I the antagonist for telling him directly how I felt about his brother? I'm wondering if I should have just kept it to myself. So like we always do, we take care of the story up front. We give it the decoy court where I give you my knee-jerk reactions. We're going to talk about some top comments down below. We're going to go over those more fun, controversial comments. I'll read your comments as well. Then we'll do some decoy deliberation where we kind of figure out who indeed is the true antagonist and what fictitious punishment should they receive because decoy court found them guilty of being the antagonist. So I mean, I'll just go ahead and say that I understand that we can't be too hard on someone that's mentally handicapped. Like they said that the brother was 36, but he still could be mentally 10 years old, mentally 5 years old. We don't really know what age he's at, but you do have to put a line as to what's permissible, and you can't just look the other way, especially when they're hurting other people. And what I'm kind of seeing right here is like if he's at the if he's at the age mentally where he can identify a particular race and know why he should dislike them, he should be able to identify that he shouldn't say those things as well. So he's probably at the point where he shouldn't be saying those things, and you can coach him on it, or you can tell him, hey, that's not okay, especially as a what is it, a third party, or as just like the sister-in-law, where if the parents say it, he can say, F you, mom and dad, you don't know what I know. It's like if it's a stranger yelling at you, sometimes it's worse, especially when they're like, in that younger mindset. So it's one of those situations where like, hey, if I was with like my 5-year-old nephew and we're at a grocery store and he starts yelling like racist stuff to a particular group of people, I'm not just going to be like, he's a kid, don't worry about it. You're like, no, we're going home and we're going to smash one of his Power Rangers. Like, I don't know. Do they still play with Power Rangers? I have no idea. But just the idea that it's just like, no, you got to punish them. They can't, that's not okay. You don't say that to them. Like, you don't just let them be that way because he has a pass for whatever reason. That's essentially what they do in like South Park with Eric Cartman, kind of to illustrate how you still have to teach them the right thing. And the idea that I don't think that she's feeling, OP feels bad about the whole, she feels this way about the brother, and she feels it like, I can never be close to someone that's going to be that racially insensitive towards people and that can shout such mean things or what. I think that she's, hey, should I have not told the husband? Should I have not, like, been completely honest and told him all the harsh things that I think about as a little brother? Yes or no? Or maybe older brother, it's hard to say. But the idea that if she's going to say something about the husband's brother, I would actually prefer that she says it to the husband. Like, who else is she going to talk to? Like, the kid himself and tell him all the terrible things that she thinks, or the parents, or her family and her friends just talking trash about the husband's little brother? Like, no, I think it's good that they're in a relationship where they can communicate and she can vent to him, where it's, their team, even though she's saying not the nicest things in the world right now, it's still good that she feels comfortable enough to say it to him and to tell him like, hey, I don't think this is right. If anybody can get to the brother, the mentally handicapped brother, it's got to be maybe the family, maybe the brother, maybe, if they're seeing a therapist or something. I have very vague understanding of how that works, but just the idea that something has to happen, and this may be the first dose of it. Like he's 36 years old and he's still getting away with shouting racial slurs at people at a grocery store. Like, at some point in time, this needs to be addressed. It's not okay, because let's say that he says those racial slurs when he's out and about and he's alone, and that person just doesn't take well to it. The same way that you're responsible for, if you're at the grocery store and, your child knocks over an entire display of like spaghetti sauce, you're responsible for that. So the racial slurs isn't a fair analogy, but it's like, that kind of reflects bad on you. If you have, a child and they're shouting all that stuff, they're not going to blame them because they're still very, what's the word, malleable. Like you can still impact what they think. So I'm going to go ahead and say not the antagonist. No antagonist here, except for maybe not even no antagonist here, including the mentally disabled brother, because maybe no one's just been teaching him the right thing. They're just kind of letting him go on the internet and just learn all these weird things that he should be angry about, and just saying, okay, cool, son, whatever you need to do. So I'm going to go ahead and say no antagonist here, but I'm sure I will get blasted. So take a quick break. Pause the video, tell me what you think, get yourself a decoy coin down below by giving me good feedback, tell me I'm wrong, tell me I'm right, make fun of me, whatever it is, as long as it makes me think, laugh, and change my mind, whatever it is. Just put it down below because I like reading it. But let's go ahead and read that top comment right now. So the top comment says, not the antagonist. Just because someone suffers a disability or illness, it doesn't mean you have to accept their behavior. The brother may not understand what's wrong or offensive or why. I don't know the details, obviously, but that doesn't mean you have to put yourself in that situation, nor gloss over it because it has a disability or illness. You have your boundaries and feelings, and you're entitled to them. It's a crappy situation given the details, but you have to look out for you. I understand for your partner it's not great to hear, and understandably, he would love you two to get along, but he needs to understand that some things are unacceptable, and even given the circumstances, it's not right. What that man and child were subjected to was not fair, and your partner can't ignore it as a reason for anything. You don't have to be friends or like the brother, but you're willing to be civil and such. Explain that to your partner, which is probably true. Maybe she could say like, hey, look, I'm still gonna, go to family dinners and holidays and everything. I'll still respect him and get him something on Christmas, but we're just never gonna be close. I'm never gonna like him because he's a rancid, toxic person, and that's fine because if he's a rancid, toxic person, treat him as such. So let's go ahead and read the next reply. So they quoted the whole idea about if someone suffers a disability or illness, it doesn't mean you have to accept the behavior. And then the next, they wrote, I feel that not enough people understand this. When I was in high school, a classmate of mine had severe Asperger's. It was so bad he couldn't even be in public school because any mix-up in scheduling resulted him in losing it and freaking out for a solid hour. It was pretty sad to see him in that state, and our entire class tried to accommodate him as best as we could. But after a while, it became pretty clear that he was an enormous antagonist, and his Asperger's had very little to do with it. He would regularly use his disability as an excuse or even as a way to guilt trip other students. There was this one girl he had an obvious crush on and demanded to sit next to her regularly, claiming that due to his Asperger's, he should sit next to the same person as often as possible. He would be rude as heck to everybody and didn't like this, and the teachers allowed this because he supposedly couldn't tell that he was being hurtful. Now, it is true that people with Asperger's have a lot of trouble with understanding the emotions of other people, but I have met a few people with Asperger's since then, and they were never mean and vicious. That guy, though, he just called you every name in the book if he felt like it. That guy was such a bad person that I'm still mad about it, and every time I tell someone how they look at me, they just, whenever I tell somebody about that, they look at me as I just drop-kicked a baby. People with mental disabilities are people too. Some people are just antagonists. And I have seen that before where, like, in my high school, we did have a group of disabled kids, and they had their own special class, but whenever we'd encounter them, they would come out to the track and field and get some exercise, but they would say some pretty vile, intimately suggestive things to the girls, and I almost, even as a kid, I would think that, yeah, I understand that they have disabilities, but this is not okay for the girls to hear this from these other kids that are their age when it's very suggestive and angry, and it's like, I understand we need to let them, play out here and get some outdoor time too, but where do we draw the line? Where is the line? And that's the thing is, I think that, once you start giving them a pass for something small, it could become something much, much more larger later on in life. So Obviously, I'm not an expert in the field, so that's why I'm not saying anything definitively on this, but I do often ponder this sort of situation where it's like, yes, they're mentally this age, but you gotta have some sort of boundary. Like, they need to know right and wrong still. Just because they haven't, like, reached adulthood doesn't mean that they should just, okay, throw out the book. Like, they don't need to know if they're being disgusting or terrible or just mean to people. They still need to know that. So let's go ahead and read this next top comment. Not the antagonist. Hey, I get disabilities, but listen, if the guy's smart enough to use the internet and impressionable enough to learn these toxic behaviors from those dark corners of the internet, he's capable of learning other behaviors too, like politeness. The disability card is sometimes necessary, but sometimes it means people don't ever try to hold these individuals to any standards. Very smart. You don't have to like this. You don't have to feel comfortable on this or fix it. That's true. It's not her responsibility, and someone just says this. And that's the one thing I think I was touching on too, where it's like, you don't let them just get a card, a pass, like, hey, look, they have a hardship, so they can be mean to everybody. That's not right. And also the idea that, like I was saying before, is like, if he's smart enough to use the internet, be impressionable about all the stuff that he's reading online, he's smart enough for you to say, hey, knock it off. That's not okay. Not like striking him, but like, hey, don't do that. Stop. So it's a situation where I can understand that 36 years of raising the person would be very taxing, and they'd probably be discouraged from trying to like stop it. Like, that's who he is. We just gotta, like, truck on. But you can't hate on OP for disliking it or whatever. So let's go ahead and read the next reply. As I said, they highlight in the comment above, and they say, a lot of disabled people with behavioral issues fall into 3 categories. 1. Victims of their condition, extreme autism, Asperger's, conditions that inhibit cognitive function and development. 2. Subject to a bad environment, which doesn't sound like an issue with his family. And 3. Milking their disability because they know they get a pass. My sisters are disabled, and I've seen this from grade school classes to their adult daycare community nowadays. I can't tell you how often this is the case with less inhibited individuals. Which is true. Like, maybe this is unfair for us to say that there are, like, there's levels of this. There's like a spectrum of autism where maybe some people, they can learn, and they can learn to not do that. And maybe some people are too far down the spectrum where it's like, you'd be a fool to try to teach them, like, hey, don't do that, or like, don't be as impulsive. So correct me if I'm wrong down below. Like, let me know, because I'm always open to learning something new. And let's go ahead and read the next reply down there. Not the antagonist. Normally, I'm an advocate for the disabled, but your brother-in-law sounds exhausting to be around. You had every right to be upset, and your husband should understand why. And that's the thing, is everybody can understand each other, and they can still just be exhausted by the situation. He's like, okay, I really wish that my brother and my wife could get along just fine. It sucks. He's losing sleep. He's angry, but that's reality. He's probably having a hard time at work too, so, you can't blame him. So the next reply is, you can be an advocate for the disabled and still understand and say that people with learning disabilities can still be jerks. They can still be mean, racist, homophobic, sexist, etc. That's not always due to their disability. Sometimes, like in this case, it's learned behavior from others and not being able to set limits by caregivers. I know some people who have physical, not mental disabilities, and despite all the bullying and harassment, etc. they face, they can be extremely prejudiced against others. Which is, people are people. Like, you can't just say, just because you put this label on them saying they're untouchable or they're always going to be that way. Like, let them be people, let them grow, let them, interact, be social. So, like I said, I'm probably speaking out of turn because my limited exposure to this situation. But I mean, let me know in the comments down below. But like I always say, top comments are for perspective. Controversial comments are for entertainment, fun, or maybe just things that we missed. So the top controversial comment says, you're the antagonist, or rather, you acted in that way when you waited till you were exploding to talk to your husband. It's stressful for everyone lately, and no one can be expected to handle all these situations perfectly. I think this is a snapshot of why you're in the wrong. This is a perfect example of why communication is so important, so that no one gets to the point where we snap and say things we regret. You're not an antagonist for needing boundaries in this situation, but you are for trying to establish them over an angry, hurtful phone call. Collect your thoughts and sincerely apologize to your husband for how you handled the situation and for things that you said about his family. Then you can reopen the conversation about what it is and isn't working in the current situation and what you want to do to solve them. I kind of feel like she said this is the solution. I'm going to move out. I'd rather live in a hotel. I can't deal with him anymore. And the idea that it wasn't like a boiling over situation. Well, I kind of in a way, but the idea that this was a direct reaction to just one incident where she's making a father and a boy feel ashamed of being who they are. That was probably hard for her to see. So a situation where it's like, having good communication is important. Yes, she communicated with him. She didn't gossip about it. She didn't tell her sister. There's no it's part of the story where she's just boiling it over. I can't believe it, and just finally lashing out. She was yelling at one particular situation that's isolated, which was the time that she needed to communicate. Maybe if it was just him saying racist things at the dinner table and him being rude to her, she could take it, but she couldn't handle the outside interaction that he was having. But I mean, let's see if there's any comments over here. OFC, of course? I don't know. So he's saying, OFC, the most understanding man in the room is at least -3 LMAO. I wonder how many of the top commenters have even lived with somebody with a mental illness or even taken a course in conflict resolution. Either would have greatly helped in this. So yeah, that is true. Maybe most of us haven't lived with someone with a mental illness and taken courses in conflict resolution. I don't really know if that taking a class in conflict resolution at some like community college is going to help you handle a situation like this. Like, what is the packet in that class going to tell you to do when your brother-in-law is shouting racial slurs at an Asian family buying groceries? What's the conflict? I don't really know. Like, maybe I'm just getting upset at this because somebody's telling me that I'm wrong, but I just have a hard time understanding that. And then the next person says, not sure why you're getting downvoted. This probably is the best / most logical approach to this. The whole apologizing for the boiling over, I don't know. I just everybody seems to be piling on this, saying, hey, you're right, everybody don't downvote this guy. But I feel like the reason that I would downvote this guy is because I think that she is communicating well. I don't think that yes, she's making it harder on the brother, but like, you know, why does everybody expect you to be the only adult in the room? Like, the husband doesn't have any disabilities. She should be able to vent to the husband. They're separated. She's living with essentially not strangers, but, you know, not her husband, not her home. So it just makes sense that she's not going to be in the most 100% emotional state right now. So I don't really blame OP like they are. So let's look at this next controversial reply. Oh my God, not the antagonist. My grandpa is racist, and one time he yelled out of my window to this black man, get off my road. I rolled up my window so fast. Not the antagonist, not the antagonist. But here's the thing, is that the grandpa is a racist. He's not like mentally disabled, so I don't think that he could get... It doesn't really translate well when the grandpa is just a racist, when you have a racist that just doesn't know any better and somebody with mental disabilities. So, like I always say, let me know down below. Get yourself that Decoy Koi coin, and, you know, thanks for stopping by. Thanks for coming around, hanging out during this furlough, reading these crazy stories and interacting with me. If you haven't already, please subscribe down below. Turn the notifications on so you can be a part of the discussion down below, because I feel like the first commenters always get replies, and then maybe a day later, it's just kind of not as much. I read everything, but other times people don't really see it. So if you haven't already, go check out DecoyNoise.com for polls, more information, access to the podcast, and if anything else, just turn on autoplay and watch more Decoy Noise coming up next.